celebrate the passage of the Taxi and Livery Driver Protection Act through the City Council Transportation Committee earlier this morning, chaired by Councilman Rodriguez, and hopefully tomorrow, the final passage of this important legislation through the City Council itself. The folks behind us are incredibly important to all of us. They're New Yorkers, they're our constituents, they are the men and women who play a very, very important role in mass transportation in this city. They drive taxis, delivery cars, and without them, our city would literally come to a halt. What most New Yorkers don't realize is that theirs is amongst the most dangerous jobs in the country. A taxi or livery driver is 20 to 30 times more likely to suffer violence on the job than those in other occupations. And what we want to do is make sure that the public in general and any individuals who would think of harming a taxi or livery driver know that there are very, very serious consequences for doing so. Assaulting a taxi or livery driver can get you up to 25 years in prison. It's that serious. And so what this legislation would do would require that taxis and liveries and other for-hire vehicles have a sign inside the vehicle saying that assaulting a taxi or livery driver is punishable by up to 25 years in prison. We are certain that some percentage of people might get into that cab and think that they're going to take advantage of that driver, cause harm to that driver, engage in what they might think would be inconsequential mischief against someone that they might think is not that important because maybe they're an immigrant or a new American, that they are going to think twice.
Thank you. Thank you, Rory, and thank you all the taxi drivers and their representation who are here today. We were outraged when we heard some of the stories that have happened to livery drivers, taxi drivers throughout this city. Taxi drivers perform a service for our community, an important service to a lot of us, and it's important that they're treated with respect. They're supporting their families too, and they have every right to expect that when they get in their cab that they can do so safely and not going to be attacked by one of their passengers. And it is just outrageous, some of the behavior that has happened. So I am hopeful that Councilmember Lancman's bill that I'm proud to co-sponsor will have an impact on many people to make them think twice before they do anything stupid in a taxi and take any action against that taxi driver who's just doing their job and trying to do it well.
The taxi drivers and the livery car drivers and some of the community van drivers and even people who drive accessory, they all provide a vital service to our city and they deserve to be protected. So I think this law would be a great step to make sure all these drivers are protected and they'll be safe and they can always go home back to their family at the end of the shift. So I just want to congratulate everyone for working on this and look forward to passing it tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you so much for your vote this morning. We've also been joined by Councilmember Vanessa Gibson from the Bronx, who is chair of the Public Safety Committee, and her support for this legislation and what that means in terms of the council recognizing this as a public safety issue has been very, very important.
In addition to mass transportation, many residents use taxis and liveries to get around our borough and our city. And so this is very important in making sure that we raise the level of awareness and education on assaulting any taxi or livery driver is punishable by up to 25 years in prison. This is serious. Yeah! In my borough, in the Bronx, this summer, we had 2 livery drivers who were robbed and murdered in the Bronx. And thankfully, the police department captured those perpetrators, but we cannot stop there. We cannot allow our drivers to be victims in their own communities. We must promote opportunities to provide safety for them and their families. And so I recognize the importance of this, and I stand with all of you in making sure that we don't stop here at this legislation, but let this be a movement to making sure that in every way possible we provide as much safety as possible, because they are the engine that runs in this city. And I'm so grateful and thankful to all of my colleagues and advocates for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Another supporter of the legislation is here today, Councilmember Andy Cohen.
Thank you. I really just wanted to come and thank Rory for his leadership on this, and thank the Alliance for all the work they've done, the advocacy to get us here today. I'm going to tell you a secret. As a new legislator, I like the no-brainer, and this legislation is a no-brainer. I'm really proud that we could make what is a dangerous job maybe just a little bit safer today, and I'm really happy to be supportive, and I look forward to this passing tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now let's hear from some of the taxi and livery drivers themselves and their advocate, Vanessa L from the New York Taxi Workers Alliance. Come say a few words and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Vanessa L, Executive Director of the New York Taxi Workers Alliance. And first, on behalf of the 18,000 members of the Taxi Workers Alliance, I want to thank Councilman Rory Lancman, who really has been our angel on this issue back to his days when he was in the Assembly. It's a bittersweet day, really, for us. It feels really bitter that we should need this law. But the reality is that in all the years that we have been organizing, we have spent far too many hours and days, and especially overnights, in hospital emergency rooms and, in the apartments of visiting our members who lay there after being, physically assaulted. And all they were trying to do was serve the public and earn a decent living for themselves and their families. I mean, working a 12-hour shift is grueling enough. And then to have, within those 12 hours, you have to earn back a lease that could be anywhere from $130 to $190 in expenses before you break even for yourself. On top of that, you're serving strangers who are deciding where you're going to take them. Only they know the streets and the alleyways where you end up, and only they know what is really on their minds when you get to that destination. And to think that there are taxi drivers who've had to complete a fare after having a passenger go through the small partition window and try to choke them, or take a knife and stab them in the back, or Ki-chun Kim, who lays in a coma till today because on New Year's Eve, almost 2 years ago, while the world was celebrating, New Yorkers were celebrating, this man, like his fellow drivers, was out there serving that public so they could celebrate. And at the end of that shift on his last fare, because a passenger didn't want to pay, instead turned around and pummeled the driver. There are many passengers that beat the fare, but you would not believe the number that not only do they not pay you, but then they turn around and actually assault you. He was left bleeding on that ground, and he remains in a coma. Shajadur Rahman, just 5 years earlier, similarly was left bleeding on the ground, was in a coma in a vegetative state, and that man has now died. 3 young girls that grew up watching their father, while he was in a nursing home trying to wake up from a coma. This is no way for any family, for any child to spend precious years of their life. No family should have to spend 12 hours waiting for their loved one to come home after a shift and wondering how that night is going. How many people have screamed at them? Has someone tried to spit at them? This is a workforce of 50,000 just yellow cabs alone. 100,000 when you look at yellow cabs, green cabs, FHVs, liveries, black cars. You add the paratransit, commuter vans. This is an enormous workforce in the city of New York that collectively moves 1 million people every single day. They're integral to the economy, to the society, to the culture of New York City. And what this bill does is offer a small step in saying that men and women are out there serving the public, they should be respected for their labor and their lives should be protected. And so we're very thankful for this day, and we look forward to the TLC implementing the rules so we can finally see these warning signs throughout New York City, just as we see them when we visit cities like Philadelphia, Chicago, and throughout California. New York has the biggest taxi industry in North America. There is no reason why we should have lagged behind for so long. So we're really thankful to this day that we could take this small step forward in really serving giants of workers who do an enormous job for the city of New York. Thank you. So I'd like to introduce to you one of my heroes. This campaign was actually born in a hospital room. When my friend, my brother, Mamnun Ul Haq was stabbed in the middle of his shift, I remember when we got the call. He's a founding member of the Taxi Workers Alliance. This is a man who would spend like half of his shift out there, leafleting to taxi drivers, taking grievances, going to garages and brokerages with drivers, coming out to public hearings. He's one of the heroes that has stood up for justice, rights, respect, and dignity for all of his fellow taxi drivers. But he is also a hero because on the night that he was stabbed, not only did Mamnun keep his composure so he could stay alive to this day, but he also kept control of that car, which could have easily, rammed into other vehicles. He kept the people around him safe, even while he himself suffered an enormous injury. And he is a hero that while he was in that hospital bed, he talked about using his incident to do some good for his fellow drivers and called for better policy that would protect drivers so none of his brothers and sisters would have to face what he had just faced. So it's truly my great honor to introduce to all of you my friend and organizing committee member, my brother, Mamnun Ul Haq.
Thank you. I came a little late to work. I live in Brooklyn. I used to live at that time in the Borough Park area. So around 8:30, I picked a young fellow from Carroll Garden, coupled with the border of Clinton Street, and he was heading to Brooklyn Promenade, which is right up to this building on the other side of the building, in front of the Watchtower. So once I reached to the destination, and he stabbed me, even a blink of eye, I didn't even notice. I just pulled over car to the car, and I felt something in my back, so painful. I can't tell you what happened. I mean, how painful it was. And it was 10 inches hunting knife, 2 centimeters wide, just desperately trying to kill me. He did not ask for money. I didn't have any conversation. I was checking my copy. I just bought it like a few minutes earlier. And stabbed me. And since his blade all the way went to my back, the knife was so jagged, trying to take off the knife, couldn't. I was so careful. I just moved and hold the knife and close the partition. My injured side. I closed the partition. I locked it, and I locked the door. I started to drive. And what Rory said, I drove a few blocks, and then I just stopped in the middle of the intersection by trying to get attention from the public. And then the one lady and one gentleman, they came to me, and by the time the guy just left, just opened the door, he left. And I told them, I've been stabbed. Can you call ambulance? And they got me to the hospital. And I survived. And the headline was "How inches dead and alive." Taxi activist. That's the way the headlines get all the newspapers. If the knife landed any other direction, half inches, it would be catastrophic. I should be here today. It cut my aorta and punched my heart. And car. Just right now I know because I work in health department, public. And I decided to leave the job. But I couldn't permanently get out. Last couple of years I drive Sunday. But it's still that fear. I mean, fear in my mind. I mean, cab drivers are going through all these things. They are taking all those things one way or the other. So why the bill is so important? And if you put this sticker, if you pass this bill, put this sticker in the cab or outside the cab, it doesn't mean that the crime will go down to zero. But at least, if anyone wants into the cab, see a sign, say assaulting a taxi driver is a felony, up to 25 years in prison, and the person will think twice, I'll do this crime or not. So at least you'll think, I don't want to spend 25 years in jail for cab. So, I mean, at least driver will be, will not get hurt. So that's the basic thing. I mean, we cannot in any crime, we cannot bring it down to zero. It's not possible. Someone will do that. So, but at least it will be a big help for the taxi drivers. And I'm really thankful to the council again to pass this legislation.